Hey, Reef Builders, and welcome back to another session of Reef Therapy. My name is Remy. I'm joined by Salem today, and our special guest, one of the founders of Ecotech Marine, Mr. Patrick Clasen. It's Reef Stock Chattanooga week, so we are firing on all cylinders. Just a housekeeping note: once Reef Stock is over, we will get back to our regularly scheduled programming with therapy and with the Reef Builders main channel. I am but one man, and I apologize for this.
One cook, too many kitchens.
Yeah. If you don't have Reef Stock Chattanooga tickets, make sure to grab those. You don't want to be the one person in your reefing friend group that is left out here. You don't want to get that FOMO. So reefstock.show/Chattanooga and add the salty shindig. This is something that I think is a really good idea. It's the vendor party that always happens at all these trade shows that regular average hobbyists are not invited to. But it is a ticketed event. We are inviting average hobbyists. So if you want to come hang out with all the speakers and all the vendors, and of course, Salem and I and the Reef Builders team, make sure to get those tickets as well. That's an add-on when you're on the website. So, Patrick, let's just get right into it. You're one of the co-founders of Ecotech Marine. Before we get into a little bit of the history of the company, how did you get into this? Like, what intrigued you about the hobby in general?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. So I've been doing this for a while. It was kept aquariums when I was a kid. Got into the hobby. There's something about underwater life that just when you're young or even old, right? That just can kind of capture that imagination. So I was always curious about saltwater aquariums, but it wasn't until when I was in college that I had a chance to meet Tim Marks. We were actually roommates, and we set up a tank in our living room apartment when we were at Lehigh. So that kind of drew me in. Just the underwater life and like learning about corals and kind of just having that as part of your day to day or your experience. I just got my daughter a beta, and man, I can't believe how much she just loves this fish. I mean, it is the same color as the little castle that we bought, which she loves. But I think just kind of getting into it and connecting with the animals. I mean, that just drew me in.
Yeah, and you studied some pretty interesting things in college. What were your majors, and what did you focus on?
Well, when I was in school, I kind of knew I wanted to do engineering. I'm from St. Louis, like you, Remy. So,
Mhm.
uh, I went to school on the East Coast, Lehigh University. I got out here, and I didn't really know what I wanted to major in. I knew I liked the technical side of things. I ended up majoring in materials engineering, which was nice because it wasn't super of the engineering disciplines. It wasn't like the super math heavy one, and it had a lot of physics and material sciences. Got a lot of different things that you can kind of dive into. And as an undergrad, I ended up doing some research on nanoparticles and you know electron microscopy, which was fun. Um, and then when we had the opportunity to kind of build something, well, Tim and I were roommates. We started this aquarium, and there was some opportunities with grants. So we applied for this idea together to take a kalkwasser reactor and add a dosing pump to it. And so we decided to apply to have like a team of engineering students and business students kind of work on this as a project for a year. And then that's how I got involved with Ecotech and trying to build something new.
So is this kind of like the story of Facebook, where it was born in a college dorm room?
Yeah, I mean, Justin and Tim, my two partners, started doing this when they were well, Tim was in high school, and they met on reefs. Well, something that Salem, you probably don't even remember. IRC. You guys heard of this? This is
I
like
know Reef Central. That's about as early as I go.
this is before Reef Central, reefs.org, and then IRC, which is just like internet relay chat. This is like chat before chat. And there was some like super nerdy reef aquarium chat groups, and that's where Tim and Justin met. They started making these things, kalkwasser reactors, in their basements. So they were doing that when I met them. And when I came in, things had developed a little bit more. It was 2003, and we decided to try to step this up and commercialize this with a little bit more technology. And then that's where we found it. That's where we got started.
Was the reactor a stirrer, or was it just a place to put the kalkwaser?
It was a stirrer, right? So we're taking RODI water. Calcium hydroxide does not dissociate in salt water. It's the ionic strength is too high. So you have to mix it with that fresh water as top off. So there was a DC motor with a little rheostat, a potentiometer, and then you're controlling the speed of it. And then it's pressurized generally, right? So you're putting the water in either from your RO line or from a dosing pump. And then you're pulling that out and putting it into your tank. So this technology was not new. Like, we didn't patent the idea of or come up with the idea for using calcium hydroxide in aquariums. It happens to work really nicely. I think Nielsen, which is a German author, and the Modern Reef Aquarium, I believe, is the series. And they published in, I don't know, I'm going to guess the 90s. But that's the prototype of what became the first Ecotech product, which was a calcium reactor. It wasn't until 2005 that we came up with the idea for the vorte pump. And then that is what got us, right? The idea for the vorte pump and, making that a reality is where Ecotech was really where we made it. I mean, that was the first step, at least.
My timeline is all messed up because I thought that maybe you guys had started with the lights, but what year did the lights come out?
I'm going to guess 2011.
Okay. So there's definitely
2012.
There's a gap between there. Obviously, the vortex they were something that, we hadn't really seen before in the hobby. And, you kind of take the cords out of the tank, which is nice. And you've got the wet side and everything. But before we started the podcast, you had said something about where this technology was used as well as the Reef Aquarium. Can you tell us that?
Yeah. So, I mean, okay, right? Initially, the first idea of the Vortec was, let's get the motor out of the water, get the electricity out of the water, get the heat out of the water. LEDs weren't really a thing. People are still using metal halides and fluorescents. So heat's a problem. So getting that heat and electricity out of the water. Incidentally, I'd love to explore a little bit more with you guys in the future about putting voltages in water, because the Vortec, you don't have to worry about it, but the more pumps you have, stray voltage is a problem. Anyway, I'm getting on a rabbit hole here. So when we introduced the Vortec, it was this cool thing. We didn't have to do any marketing because it was like this, wow, what? There's no holes in the glass? That's kind of cool, right? It was just cool. It was nifty, right? So when other people in different industries saw that, we were approached by two different companies, and this is crazy, but in the pedicure spa place. So, I mean, have you guys had a pedicure before?
No.
Either of you?
No, I'm
No?
not.
And I'm not just saying that because I don't want to admit it because I'm a guy. I've been approached, but I like I said on the pre-call, I don't want to subject anybody to those things. It's
I'm gonna come out and say I am a proud male who enjoys a pedicure. It is a wonderful experience to have.
I'm pedicure curious.
So, the problem with pedicures is that traditionally you'd have these pipes inside of this chair. Like, you're in a big massage chair, and imagine a tub attached to it where there's water coming in, and then you stick your feet in the tub. It's heated, it's mixing, you've got soap and I don't know, stuff in there. And then they, soften those really gnarly feet of yours, Remy. They just get them really nice and ready. And then the next person comes in, you got to clean that out. How are you going to clean those pipes, right? This is their problem. And then they saw the Vortec pump, because you want to make little flow inside of this tub. It just makes it nicer. You don't want to just soak in a stagnant water. So the Vortec, the idea was we'll put a Vortec in there. It'll still mix everything, but you can take it out and clean it, right? So once we got that idea patented, we were in the pedicure spa business. What we didn't realize is that the environment in which the wet side of the vortex was now placed was vastly different than the environment of a saltwater reef aquarium. And therefore, we may have different challenges that we wouldn't expect. So it took us a while to get it right, but eventually we finally nailed in the design, which is different in certain ways from the vortex that you saw back then and the one that you have today. But yeah, so we were in that business. It was interesting.
Is it that ubiquitous now that like legitimately almost every one of these nail salons has these now?
No kidding. Like you go to any nail salon. I have not seen a pedicure salon that doesn't use this. Like it changed the industry. You know,
This is where husbands and
Ecotech
wives need
Marine,
to start talking, because I had no
right?
idea. My wife has probably been going all these years and like using, the pumps that we use in our aquariums. That's hilarious. I love it.
Yeah, we were talking. I mean, in that space, we got copied pretty early on, and we weren't making enough money that we were going to try to defend the IP. Aquarium world, we were raking it in on the like the first vortex pump. We're growing this thing, and it just didn't seem like risking the intellectual property that we had, because whenever lawsuits suck, man. Like we licensed that technology, and then we moved on with our lives and built things like the Radion, and then the story, as you guys know.
Yeah. Will you before we get in, I have a burning question about one of the aquariums that Salem got to mess with in the studio over these past 2 weeks, but we'll get into that. He's curious now. I can see it on his face.
Yeah, like which one? What?
Take us through a couple. I see you've got a couple of aquariums behind you. What are the dimensions on those? How long have they been up? Give us a little bit of backstory on those.
So this is a water box. I think it's a 200-gallon Peninsula. I don't know the model name off the top of my head. So this is a mixed reef. Predominantly, I've got some Euphilia, Gonopore doing really well. I'm growing hard corals. I've got a bunch of clams in here. This tank's about 14 months old, and I've had some ups and downs, but it's doing pretty well right now. I've got a mixture of tangs and some wrasses in here. Now the fish actually came from Kurt Pansegrau, who's the founder of Neptune. So he was kind enough. He's out traveling the world right now on his boat. So he shut his aquarium down, and like I'll give him a good home. We got a gem tang that was his. We've got a purple tang, the hippo tang, the Achilles, which is doing really well. I was just watching an episode, Remy, of getting ready for this, and this Achilles has had ick a few times and survived. I've got my UV sterilizer right here, which has suited me well, but it's a battle, right?
Yeah.
And then the tank over there, right? This is a 90-gallon water box, and this is my predator tank. So I've got some lionfish, pufferfish. I've got an Australian stripey. That's a really cool fish.
Yeah.
A few different tangs, and I'd like to continue to build that collection. And then there's another tank you can't really see. It's behind all this. That's like an anemone soft coral tank. I was talking with the wife the other day. We were curious about, we're seahorse curious.
Okay.
maybe pipefish curious. It's really low flow, but it's doing well right now. So
That's awesome.
I will tell you, most of my career at Ecotech, I had an aquarium at the office, or we had multiple office tanks. It wasn't until, well, about 2.5 years ago when there was the change into Aperture, right? And then I'm like, for whatever reason, I'm getting like all these tanks at my house. So I've been diving in, and I will say, it's definitely different living with a bunch of aquariums.
Yeah.
In your house, in your space, like your time, your family time. I got 3 kids. Like, it's a negotiation with everything, right? As is life. But I'm really, really enjoying, having all this underwater world in my house, and it's not without its frustrations, but it's been been good.
I wish those Australian stripies didn't get so big, because I feel like they're such a cool fish and they do such a good job with Aptasia. And every single fish store that I went to when we were in Australia, that's like the main fish they had in every
Really?
single system. You didn't see any Aptasia because there was just
I was
stripies.
wondering why I didn't have Aptasia in my tank.
There
I
you
didn't
go.
realize
There you
it was
go,
the
yeah.
stripy. All right. Okay.
Yeah, they get a little bit too big in their adult size for a lot of the
Okay.
aquariums that we keep. Obviously, your big tank would be fine for that, but
Yeah.
a lot of times when you have the nano tanks, I think that's the biggest thing, is you struggle with nuisance algae that could be taken care of with tangs, and Aptasia that could be taken care of with filefish, or the peppermint shrimp, or all these things. If you get a peppermint shrimp, then you can't have wrasses or things that pick on inverts, so it's like
Yeah.
this whole thing. But once you get into a big enough size tank, then you can get all those predators for those nuisance things in your
Okay.
tank.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
You got to
that's
get
cool.
Neil. You need to get Neil. You're missing an eel in your predator
Oh,
tank.
an eel.
That's the
Yeah.
one
Oh, I
thing.
know. A snowflake eel. I was eyeing it up. Honestly, I had a snowflake at Petco. I'm like, and it was doing there. It was there for like 5 months, and then right
Okay.
before I was like, I had to put a screen top. I got to put a
Yeah.
screen top on it. That's a problem. And I was like, no, I have to wait till I get the screen top because I don't want the thing jumping.
Yeah.
If it's been there for more than 5 months, you can get a 50% discount. You have to talk to the
Oh,
aquatic specialist. You can get it for like $10.
okay. What?
Salem worked at Petco. Where did
I worked
those
at a Petco.
where do those come
Nice.
from? Don't they get a lot of stuff from ORA?
We ordered from ORA and Quality mostly.
Quality, yeah.
So, but I mean, it's in their system still, but yeah, they come from a decent starting place.
Yeah, I mean, Petco gets a bad rap, right? I think, as kind of the more advanced side of the hobby, you can go there, and if sometimes they get real gems, and they can quarantine them for a while if something's been sitting there. But their bulk is more on the freshwater side. I think that's where their real focus is. Actually, we just launched and announced we're doing glowfish tanks now.
I
Apparently.
saw that.
So,
When are the glow clowns coming? I want glowing fish and coral.
that would be something.
Yeah.
Don't give them ideas. They'll take our ideas, Salem.
Hey, I know how to use. Man, I know how to use CRISPR, site-directed mutagenesis. You put me on it, man.
There you go.
We'll make some glow tangs. Easy peasy. I mean, the plasmids were good.
There you go.
While we're on the subject, let's just address the elephant in the room before we get into, because I still want to talk about that tank in the studio. But obviously, I mean, you had mentioned something that kind of rocked the reefing world a couple years ago, and that was, you guys and Neptune and Innovative Marine and BRS all being kind of gobbled up by Aperture and now owned by this umbrella company.
I think you meant Aqua Illumination, because Innovative Marine is
yeah, AI. Sorry about that. But I guess the thing that a lot of hobbyists talk about is being able to be that big and then maintaining trust and also engaging with the reefing community. Can you kind of, I'm sure you've had this conversation before with people off of podcasts or off of camera. Can you kind of, what's your perspective on the Aperture thing?
Sure. This was kind of a exploration because we started this when we were in college, right? So walking down the road of taking your company and basically selling it to a larger group, you have to realize that things are going to change, right? And they ask you as an owner of a company to stick around for a period of time, and yeah, sure, that sounds great, and you don't really know what you're going to get. And so we made that agreement, and then actually that time period for me has been passed, and I'm still part of the team, and we've been able to build a really good group of people that I think they're smart, they've got their heads in the right place, and they're really focused on growing the hobby and taking care of our customers. So as Aperture kind of formed and coalesced, which was all of the people that are still here and involved. It evolved to be something that, I think is very focused around the hobbyist mindset, protecting, the aquarist hobby as it is today, and trying to pave a way to bring more people into this in the future. So when I look at things like Hello Reef, I look at things like bringing people into the hobby and helping them to be successful early on. I think that's a component that we kind of missed as an industry, of really holding somebody's hand from that glowfish to, their first saltwater aquarium, and then leading them down to becoming a hobbyist that might even buy an Ecotech Radion, or might be a Neptune customer or an AI customer. But how do you help more people to become involved in the hobby? And how can we do good as hobbyists in general? Because it's no secret, right? Like the reefs, the wild, I mean, it's under a lot of pressure. It's under pressure from climate change, from the acidification of the ocean, from all of the inhabitants that are inside of it. But, I think that there's this relevancy problem where, you might think, like, what's a good example? There's a war somewhere that's not anywhere near you, right? You hear about people dying in that war, think, oh man, that's really sad. But if it's something near and dear to you, family members or close friends that are involved, it becomes real, right? It becomes something that you care about. And I have this belief that if we make the ocean more real for people, if we help people to care about what is a coral, like why am I supposed to give a flip about this stuff, right? And bring that into their lives, that ultimately they're going to care more about what's happening in the natural world, and help us to preserve it and maybe make changes.
Yeah, I will say I think the Hello Reef product is something that was definitely missing from the hobby as a whole. I know that there's been kits before and there's been introduction videos before, but I went through, we have one, the kids and I set one up. And it's refreshing because Matthew is such, I think he's so good at that beginner stuff. Like he's so good at just like laying it out and being like,
Yeah.
step one is here. This is why we do step one. Step two is here. This is why we do step two. I think for the veteran hobbyists, like, kind of all of us in this podcast right now who have been through all those beginning stages, it's easy to be like, oh, another product from Aperture is coming up. But I think you guys did it the right way in that, there's name brand products. Yeah. All of the products included our name brand. And there's the tutorials, and it's not just 3 or 4 videos there. I'm almost positive there's over 30 videos that have been done in this, so the
Yeah.
support is there. And I think, sure, from acquiring hobbyists, you guys can see that as a financial opportunity. From my perspective, if you're gonna get more people in the hobby, then we need to educate those people on how to properly do this. And I think that's where,
Otherwise you lose them, right?
exactly, I think that's where the Hello Reef thing has in my mind, it was kind of a home run and needed in the hobby. I'm not just saying that because you're in front of me. I've told that to many people. I've done a couple videos on it. Like I truly feel that way. So
Yeah.
but the other part of this whole Aperture thing was, okay, so are we going to see higher prices and reduced competition? So now our choices are limited all of a sudden. What would you say about that?
Yeah. To me, I think everything in our lives, the prices have gone up. I haven't seen from the inside anything that would indicate that there was anything outside of regular market forces in any pricing decisions that have gotten changed or ruled out. If anything, I think they've really tried to keep things stable for most of everything. And actually, I managed for Ecotech. I managed pricing for like 18 years or whatever. And we weren't cheap products, right? We demanded a premium for the products because we put innovation and we put a lot of thought into them, and gave our people the top quality that they could deserve. So, I don't see any consolidation. There's still plenty of options on the market outside of things produced and manufactured by Aperture. Bulk reef supply offers a really wide variety of everything on the market, but it's also not the only place to shop, right? There's a lot of options on the market. So I don't really see that becoming an issue. And if prices are too high, people are just not going to buy it. There's other alternatives. So natural economics, right? I think we can rely on that. Would just win in that equation in the end.
I guess if the intention is though to keep more people in the hobby and to get beginners in with the Hello Reef product, if price is a barrier to entry and they go to your competition, how are you able to fulfill that goal?
Well, the Hello Reef is a really good deal, I think, from an end user. If you add up all the retail prices for those things in the box, we're doing our best to make the economics of our influence and our ability to put that together. And it is not very expensive. Um, there is a competitor that I will say is now available to buy an all-in-one aquarium at Petco, and I won't mention them by name, but they're well known, and it's more expensive, and I don't think it sells because ultimately it's a good product. It's got everything in there that you need, but it's just beyond the price point that people are willing to spend. So when you buy it like an Aquarion tank, you bring home some rock or some fish from Petco. We all know, like, if you don't learn about how to keep a saltwater tank, and they're not going to stop you. You you buy a tank, you bring home the fish, and like the likelihood of you succeeding just with no support is very, very. It's like zero. Like you're going to screw up something. So you know, we don't charge for this education component of Hello Reef. I mean, it is built in. It is the philosophy of how we've kind of structured this thing. So ultimately, the price of that product is really competitive because what we want to do is bring more people in and get them educated, and then they can go wherever they want, right? But we feel like if we give them pearls of knowledge, if we help them to become successful, that goodwill, right, is going to come back to us in the end. That's kind of our philosophy, and we'd love to kind of take you along the journey. But right now, Hello Reef is just kind of that initial step.
Is there going to
So
be a Hello Reef 4-foot tank coming soon? Hello Reef intermediate.
yeah, I mean, there's work to be done there. I we'll see. I'm not sure where they're going to take it exactly, but I'm excited to see.
You could do like Hello Reef, my first dosing pump, and it's like it goes into BRS 52 weeks. It's the
Yeah,
stepping stone. Yeah.
right. So
um,
it's there's a lot out there. We've got a number of brands at our disposal, and I think you'll see kind of a progression through the brands even, right? The Hello Reef has an AI light, right? There's nothing Ecotech or Neptune in there, but maybe one day, I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. I think it might be just human nature to villainize or to point fingers or try to villainize. And I always try to make the separation from, big giant company hovering over, but like you're a real person who started this in college. Like there is no question in my mind with the 3 tanks in the background of your shot that you love this,
Yeah,
that your heart is in this. I think what you guys have put out is decent. At least over the last couple of years, I don't know that we've seen a ton of innovation from a wide swath of companies, and I don't know if that's because of, is that pandemic, is that chip shortage, is that like, do you know what that would be? I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for the vortex again. I'm waiting for the thing that turns all reefers heads again, that turns
yeah,
all hobbyist heads. Is that around the corner for you guys?
yeah. Well, so an interesting thing about Ecotech is that we created a roadmap early on, And we were just working to complete that roadmap in our heads. And like my business partners, it always took longer than you wanted it to take. And innovation takes time. It does not come easy. If you're trying to do new things, it takes time and effort and failures. There was a few of those along the way. And we have a roadmap that we're working to. It sometimes changes, but there's some really cool stuff that we work at the different levels of the pipeline of the engineering team and of the product development teams. But we're absolutely committed to continuing to make really cool products. I think the Trident NP, honestly, is a game changer for what I'm doing. Like the Predator take back there, it's soft coral. I don't care about my calcium, alkalinity, magnesium relative numbers on that one. I've just got the NP on that, right? Because what I care is, am I overfeeding, right? Am I going to cause a huge algae bloom? And for me, that's a really important number to know. And so that product in and of itself has been, and I was lucky enough to be able to work through that project as part of that team as we brought it to market. So really be able to see and understand how all of the chemistry works and everything behind it, which is deep. I mean, it is a complicated thing running these analyzers. And so, I'm still part of that team, and I just had a meeting this morning with the team about it. And, that to me has been pretty big. And I think you see innovation over time. I've seen a lot of products that I think, oh, that's clever. But, whether it comes from inside of Aperture or outside, people are still going to be creative. People are still going to think of new things to do within the space. And, the game's not over for sure. It's just keep going to trade shows, go to Reef Stock, go see if there's anything new, right?
Yeah. We want innovation now, though. So if you could,
if you could dial up the innovation button, yeah.
Well, we the cool thing is the core team that we had at Ecotech is still in the R&D lab, and so there's a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline that I'm excited about.
That's great. Love to hear that for sure. Yeah, the NP is out, so that's a leg up already on some other controllers that are about to hit the market. Obviously, with the hydro stuff,
Yeah,
we've seen a lot of that, but it's not been out in the wild yet. So
I will say there's a big gap as a product development guy between showing your prototype and it being live in the wild. There's a lot of stumbling blocks. And again, like, competition drives innovation. I think that is a good thing for the hobbyist. And at the end of the day, we're going to all produce the best products that we can. And having, like, this industry has, quite honestly, like, a really high level of technology generally, more than it deserves, because it's a hobby. Because we're here, we love doing it, right? It's attracting these technical people who like to do difficult things. Well, those are smart people. I mean, keeping reefs takes time, effort, brain power, like grit. Like, you just got to keep trying to fix it and make it work. So we're gonna, it's great. I mean, it's a wonderful little niche that we're in.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Over the last 10 years, we now have automated spectrophotometers on our tanks. Like, that's pretty cool. I never thought that would be something that would be applied to the industry, but that's something I do like about the NP, is that you have the reagent neutralization step. That's a pretty important step for using those reagents for sure. If they are the reagents I think they are, which I'm pretty sure they are. But
Yeah. Well, so what we're doing is, I think, probably more characterized. It's not really spectrophotometry as much as it is like titrations and colorimetry.
yeah,
The neutralization step was an interesting one that we tested a lot, and we actually changed the neutralization agent in that one, to make sure that it was properly neutralized before you introduce it to your household
yeah.
plumbing, right? Although Drano is, can be super high pH or super low pH, depending on, what methodology you're using. But, Yeah, I think where we ended up, I feel really good about in terms of what we're returning back and the relative components inside of this thing. Uh, it just works well. And right now, I think there's a lot of talk about measurement and precision, and obviously with any product, you're working through growing pains on certain levels, and working out kinks when a product first comes to the market. I don't think that's a secret, right? You're at any product, you're working out these certain little changes to optimize. That being said, I mean, I'm really happy with how the NP is performing. My particular units here are spot on, and the way that we've developed the chemistry and the analysis techniques are just impressive from where I'm sitting. I'm biased.
I'm totally biased, and I'm Salem just spent the last 2 weeks at the studio, and I know that our goal is to have a bunch of controllers on a lot of the systems there. So look, we don't have as many eyes on that place with Jake gone. It's just inevitable that we're not going to have as many eyes on the place. So
Yeah.
the idea of getting a whole bunch of controllers in there from different companies and testing out things and seeing how they all stack up against each other was the thing that we wanted to explore, and Neptune was the first that sent us some gear.
Yep.
But I know you had some ideas maybe for the studio, or maybe Salem and you can do a little brainstorm right now about what happens next in the studio.
Do you want
Absolutely.
me to let the cat out of the bag of what we're really planning, Remy?
I don't think you are going to be letting any cats out of bags, but
Yeah, probably not. Not
go
really.
for it. I'll edit it out if it's too much.
Okay, so something that I think we definitely could use is a Trident and a Trident MP, right? We're missing those in the studio, and I think they'd be paramount to get, because something that we would like to do as a platform is to test all of the automated testers on the market against each other in terms of accuracy and precision over a function of time. And we've got buy-in from most everyone right now. But yeah, you all were the first to deliver us any automation products, which is great. We got probes in the tanks, we've got things on controllers, but we don't have the automated testing or anything yet. So we still have to have some employees up there to do that. And there's inaccuracy with handheld test kits, and people test things differently. If you don't have a vortexer, it's going to be different every time. So to have consistent testing, I think would be good. And then yeah, we utilize Versas for the entire calc ATO system. So maybe replacing those with quiet drives, or just getting new Versas, something like that would be, I think, very beneficial and could bring the studio a very long ways. But yeah, the thing we really want to do is test all of the testers head to head against each other. If
Test
you're
the
open to that,
testers. I like it.
test the
Yeah,
testers.
let's do a little Reef BRS investigates, right? This is Reef Builders, just
Reef Builders reviews.
okay. There you go. Doesn't really flow off the tongue as well.
No, it doesn't.
It's
Yeah.
It's one of those
That's
things where I don't think that BRS can necessarily do that anymore, unbiased, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, and I think that was if I'm being honest, that was something that we learned as we did this thing, right? And then okay, well now you own these people. Yeah, how can you talk unbiased about yourself, right? Remy like could just all day be like, listen, I have the coolest feet. I have the best radio voice. I'm the handsomest. We're just not going to trust you. But at the end of the day, I think that's a great idea. And I was actually at the studio, which was a little bit of a emotional experience for me. It was the first time there this summer without Jake, and he's been such a great friend for a long time. I was mentioning to Remy the first time I met him was like back in 2005 in DC. He was one of the first. He was one of the first like 20 Vortex. We had like 20 units, and he bought 2 of them. And met him. He was just going on and on about coral and water and flow, and how flow is so important to corals. And I'm like, who is this guy?
Mhm.
And long friendship, and so it was really kind of bittersweet, but I'm so happy that you guys are holding the torch and like doing this thing really well and carrying on the Reef Builders legacy in so many ways. And I'm just very thankful for the effort that you guys are making and helping to grow this understanding and grow knowledge and grow the hobby. It's just really awesome.
I
So
appreciate that.
when I was there, and in my recent tank adventures, I've kind of come to some strategies that I feel like are really important and really to create stability and create more likelihood that you're going to have a stable system over time. Because when you take a long enough timeline on any piece of equipment, it's going to fail, right? Sometimes there's a problem with it or there's a manufacturing defect, but sometimes they'll just last, and just chug on forever, right? We've all had that return pump that we've never cleaned, and it's still moving water after 10 years, and you're just like praying, like I think I'm good. This just lasts forever, but in reality, it doesn't, right? And because you are now this kind of diversified team in geography, and Jake lived there, so he woke up, he could just tell something's wrong. I gotta go clean this pump and do maintenance on the tank. You get your eyes every day and you look at the coral, right? Number one thing, look at your tanks every day and you're going to notice a problem or know to look for something before anything else is observable, right? We were just talking about chaetomorpha, and first thing I noticed is my corals aren't looking so hot today. What happened? But when I'm thinking about Reef Builder Studio and creating automations and creating the opportunity to stop something from going wrong before anyone has to notice. And I'll give you an example. So I'm dosing, a lot of different things in the tank, not a lot, calcium, alkalinity, magnesium, and I'm doing different sources of those. I have 3 different sources of alkalinity. I've got sodium bicarbonate, sodium carbonate, which is also in the soda ash, and kalkwasser, calcium hydroxide. And if my trident notices that my alkalinity goes above, I think the setting's like 8.6, I shut off all sources of alkalinity to the tank automatically. So in the situation where, let's say, a piece of equipment fails and you guys aren't there to notice, it can happen in the middle of the night, even in your house, right? And it fails in a way that causes alkalinity to keep dumping. There was a recent case of this that I've seen on the internet where someone damaged their product and it failed in the on state. Their dose failed in the on state, and it was because it was getting dosed with salt water and dumped salt water on it every day. Actually, they were just dripping salt water on their product. Not a suggested way to use any piece of electronics.
That's
right?
your guys' fault. You know that.
It should have been waterproof from the beginning, guys. Come on. Like, you shouldn't have gaps. Well, how much do you want to pay for something? Like, really, these are consumer goods. Come on.
We need milled aluminum, one piece.
Titanium. Come on.
Let's
get legit.
Yeah.
It should withstand an explosion. IP67 explosion proof. The whole 9.
Handmade in Germany only. Like, it should be imported.
We're gonna send it to Germany just so they can do the finishing touches. So if, for example, this customer was actively testing, which they test once a week or every few days or something like that, they would have seen their alkalinity go up. But if they were using a trident, ACM, which is the OG trident, like the old trident, if the alkalinity goes above a certain point, cut off all the sources. Like, just have it automated. So when I'm thinking about you guys in the studio, this is the perfect thing, right? Create enough redundancies within your automations just to give yourself a chance to not have a failure. Because the more stable our systems are, the longer lived our inhabitants and the better success you're going to have. And there's so many ways that you could do that. I love the Neptune platform. I've become a pretty heavy user, and just finding ways that I can create redundancy. I had just put a plank feeder on this one, which is a pretty cool feeder, I have to say. But I'm so paranoid about overfeeding the tank accidentally, because there's not something that I set up an alarm on my Apex, so that if the thing stays on for more than it's supposed to, it starts beeping at me. It shuts the outlets down, and it's a secondary system, by which I can say, hey, something's not right. Like if I were to leave it in, somehow mess up the programming or leave it in an on state, I've got like safety mechanisms that are going to stop it. Like trying to create these redundancies within the programming. I mean, that's something that I found really interesting in terms of how to build your setup, and make sure that you're not gonna screw it up, I guess.
That's something
Yeah.
I definitely would like to do after, like, say, being at the studio for 2 weeks and waking up every day and looking at the coral and doing a million things that, there's just not really been someone there that's been able to do that full time. And the only way we're going to be able to keep Jake's corals alive from living in St. Louis and Kansas and Atlanta is going to be automation. Like, I want solenoids on the calc, like the calc lines, control it through that, control the pH probe, control it through the alc. I want to have like a auto water change system, have that with like flow valves, have them with the big bars, have it like, connected to the NP so we can, if it gets to a certain point, you can do an auto water change. I got plans, but we need equipment.
That's exactly, and it takes time.
Yeah.
Like it takes time to build those kinds of systems, and then you got to test your systems,
Yep.
right? And make sure that try to force a failure to see what happens, because if you set up the automation and it doesn't happen, like I have auto water change set up on this one, and then the other two I'm still working on, and the auto water change is with a dose, and then I've got two conductivity probes, two salinity probes, because I'm super paranoid. And if the salinity goes and drifts beyond the range, it shuts the auto water change off, right? Because I know, and I have personal good friends who are amazing aquarists that have auto water changed their way into tank failure. And it's because if either the dose line or the return line, if one of those gets a hole in it, or the dosing pump fails, or something goes wrong, all of a sudden you have a pretty short time window before your salinity is way off, right? So creating those redundancies in the system to say, okay, it's automatically going to tell me that something's going wrong ahead of time. And I mean, for you guys, that's what you need, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Keeping it simple, right? Like the simple, I almost feel like if you remove all of the complexity, the tank should still just run, right?
Yep.
If you're in balance, the tank's running well. And then the layers of complexity should just kind of be this safeguards, right? Shouldn't replace you as an aquarist.
And I know somebody will comment this because it happens every time we talk about controllers. Jake always said, I am the controller. But unfortunately, Jake is not with us anymore. And so we have to make sure that what he did keep, like Salem said, stays alive. And I think that not only can we, have that safeguard with controllers in place, but also test out, different controllers in the studio. And I think it's a win-win for everybody. So, yeah,
I'm I love Jake for that. And I'm going to put a caveat, because you can still be the controller, but the way I think people should use something like the Neptune system is that it's going to poke you because you're not there to make a decision, right? Because ultimately you're the aquarist that has to make the change, and you're going to be responsible for it. But if you know sooner, right? And it just gives you that window. It expands that window of reaction time.
You control it remotely. Remote control. I am the remote controller.
There you go. Yeah. I wanted to make mention now that it's been like half an hour since I last mentioned the tank. But before you got here, Salem, and I don't know if you know this story, because I was always under the impression that the tank over by the window with the holes in the bottom was some wacky project that Jake was going to do, where he's going to build an upside down reef. But Patrick, why don't you tell us the real story of what that tank was?
But did you think that, Salem?
I knew the story. Remy didn't know the story.
Okay.
You should tell the story though. I saw the prototype Radions were.
So
really
Remy thinks
cool.
Jake's making an upside down reef. Well, the reality is actually that was the display tank when we came out with the Radion. So we took that to Magna, and there was Gen 1s that was lighting the tank from the bottom. And then we had these fluorescent beads floating around in the tank with the vortex doing all that fancy stuff. And then it was the first demo of the Radion color control. And so you could move the sliders up and down and change the colors of the tanks. But we thought it was like, because we were so design minded, right? It's like super cool. You don't even see what's going, you don't even see the lights. They're coming in from the bottom. So I was talking with John from Clan Mania, and he is apparently building a bottom lit and top lit tank for
Oh,
his
that's awesome.
new setup. He was going to use blades on the bottom, which I'm a fan of. Yeah, that would be cool. Sounds like a lot of maintenance to me, scraping the glass, but I will I will be a happy bystander to see how that turns out.
Yeah, that'd be cool. It's like a
We were
tanning bed.
thinking of hanging acro colonies and getting 3-dimensional growth, having no like live rock, have it in the sump, and then have it like Avatar, like floating islands of acros or something. Playing with that idea potentially.
Yeah, it's like that's like CRF, right? That's what they do with the little Christmas tree things.
Yeah, yeah. Just
So
saltwater
natural.
though.
So natural looking. So that's good.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Let's talk about lights. Let's talk about lights before we get out of here. And I know that this can be a whole subject in and of itself, and
Yep.
I would love for you to come back and we can like deep dive on this stuff. But I don't know if you saw. I think it was maybe a couple months ago. Jamie Craggs had posted this little experiment that he did off the side of a boat, where he just, he took some measurements of spectrum and at certain depths, and it was like we saw this data and hobbyists were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, how have we never done this before? I'm sure it's been done, but maybe not as hobbyist facing as Jamie is. When you guys are developing lights, how do you take like a daylight, like a natural daylight spectrum, and then transition that into an LED fixture? Like, what kind of research goes into how we're going to mimic the sun with these LEDs?
Yeah, that's a good one. And we worked with Jamie a lot in developing the initial coral spawning setups, spectrums, Neptune and Ecotech actually. And we would go out and we would take data. We had a Lycor par meter, a spectrometer that would kind of go down and measure the spectrum at different depths. And the question really comes to is like, as hobbyists, what are we trying to accomplish? Because coral growth generally and coral coloration, they require a little bit of a different spectrum. You're activating different types of genetics within the coral's tissue that's going to elicit a certain response. So we're meeting the needs of multiple organisms. Some of them are the animals in the tank, some of them are us, right? Because are you interested in fast coral growth? Or are you interested in also having like a really awesome colored up, chalice, or really bringing out the colors within the corals themselves? So we try to strike a balance with the Radion by giving you the ultimate kind of control over a lot of different channels of light output. Now, LEDs themselves, you have kind of fall into some categories. You've got your shifted white LEDs. So you get a white that's more shifted towards the warm, or a white that's more shifted towards the blue. A lot of this will be phosphorus assisted shifts, where you're actually taking a blue light, you're illuminating phosphorus, which is then changing the spectrum of the light, and then giving you the opportunity to have a broader spectrum. And then you've got LED diodes that are emitting a very tiny spectral output, right? So a wavelength of, 410 or 680 or whatever LED you're using, and then within all of those you're creating a balance. So generally, we tried to create spectra that we knew would grow coral, but would also be pleasing for the aquarists, and people would find the spectra because there was a lot of different LED combinations that we had over the generations of Radions. And so we'd get feedback from people. We would see what's actually doing really well growing coral and what spectrums they were using to get the best color growth or the coloration versus growth. So we didn't really know the secrets of spectrum and spectra that were ideal for coral growth when we started. But as a hobby, I think with the large number of aquarists, we would naturally gravitate towards the spectrums that were giving us the results that we wanted. Like T5 bulbs. I think it was Blue Plus or Aqua Blue was like this T5 bulb that was like super popular. I know Phoenix 14K was a metal halide bulb that was very successful. So people would use the spectrums, kind of learn from using them as well. And then we would take lessons from, honestly, listening to a lot of people, using our own experience within the hobby to build a spectrum that kind of met both the needs of the aquarist and the needs of the corals over time. And we can really dive into that. There's a lot of deep topics that, like, what governs coral growth, what governs coral coloration. But the answer for us was always just try to find a balance between the both of them. And with the Radion, we've got the Pro, which is more of this balanced version of the color spectrum that you can go warmer or cooler. But if you go and you like the really blue look and you just want a lot of fluorescence pop, the Radion Blue puts more of the LED diodes in the spectrum that you want in that case. So we try to give people a lot of flexibility.
Are you open to manufacturing a limited set of products that we could test at the studio? Because I don't want to put together a bunch of Cree diodes and solder things, but I have a spectral output that I want, that I think would be good for coral growth based on what I've read in literature.
So are you shooting for just straight growth?
I want growth and coloration. What I want is as broad of a spectrum in terms of LEDs we can get. Obviously, we can't do infrared or UVA or B very much or very well. There's like a couple UVA, diodes, but they're not good penetration.
You also get into a little some dangerous territory just with the environmental,
Yeah.
UV. You don't want to look at it, right?
Yes, agree. But I mean, just like the inclusion of some of the lime or amber diodes, or like even from from lime to like the photo red diodes, I think there's a whole spectral output you're missing there. Like even just amber with like 595 nanometers, there's significant absorption there for several of the pigments. And I use like LED T5 hybrids. I've got a Radion G5, I've got a Radion G4. I've seen the best coloration and growth from the G4, and that had the broadest spectrum, the Pro, so far. And you all went bluer, and I understand the commercial reason to do that. But from someone that wants to maximize growth and coloration and mimic the natural environment the coral are found in, why not go warmer? Why not have a version that mimics that environment where you have the full spectrum? You go all the way to photo red and almost push to infrared.
Send me some spectra,
Okay. I got a whole diode layout I made, man. I was going to show it. Remy said not to, though.
Yeah, I think for research purposes, and like this is the fun stuff, playing around and trying to find spectra that do certain things. Because we have a lot of different LED lights across the Ecotech and AI brands. Some of them more simple, like the blade. This tank right here is lit by 3 blades, and I'm getting great results out of it. But and then the one back here, I'm lighting the Predator Reef only tank with Radions, and my Reef is lit by blades, which may seem odd, but it's just how it happened. But it's great because you can barely see the lighting. I mean, you can't even see that there's anything over it, which is like the really cool thing about the blade.
Yeah. Well, that's cool that you'd be open to maybe looking into some experimental stuff. You think about these big companies and they just stick to their stuff, right? But it'd be so cool to kind of go back to the dorm days or to those days when Jake was the one purchasing the first of a product, but having some say or some hand in that. I think you brought up something that is interesting, and I think most hobbyists don't realize that this whole metal halide LED thing. It's just you're what you're saying is you're doing 2 different things here. You're maximizing for growth with the halide. You're you're still getting growth with an LED, but you're more going for the coloration of the coral, correct? Is that kind of?
Yeah, I think an LED can be flexible. It can be targeted. It's more like a laser, right? You can have a narrower band of spectra, but you can also combine them in any particular combination to create a spectrum that wouldn't be achievable with, essentially a metal halide, which is you're igniting a physical metal that's been doped with certain other elements, and so you're really limited to. And maybe I'm getting the metal halide thing wrong. I mean, sometimes it's a gas. I know with the fluorescence, it's a gas. So you have physical parameters that are holding you back from experimenting. Now, the categorical reef aquarium advice is don't change anything. Like, just leave whatever spectrum you have and just let it be for forever, right? For a long time, and you're going to see good results. But Salem, you were mentioning, you've got different tanks with different spectra,
Yep,
right?
same system. These three are plumb. Oh god, Amir.
This is
These
this
three are
is the
plumbed
fun.
together.
This is the fun shit, right? This is like
Yeah,
what you should be doing, and like, okay, well, what happens if I move this coral, or even better, if you have frags under the either the different par, right,
that's what I'm
or the
doing.
different spectrum, right?
Yeah.
I got my Peter right here. Like you got to know these things. Like you have to know the par. You can't really. Most people are not going to afford a spectrometer, right, inside of their house. But like, playing with the spectrum, playing with the ideas, having multiple tanks. This is when you get like, again, you get to the obsession level of reef aquarium keeping. Like, yeah, you can. It goes deep. Like, there's no end to this rabbit hole.
Yeah. And if in your community you have someone that owns one of those, so you can get the proper readings for micromoles and things like that. Like I have one from the BRS days, and I loan it out to friends all the time. Like I'm just the guy that's known in the area that has one. So like it's out with Tyler right now. He's got it. So
Yeah.
don't shy away from trying to get that information, even though these things are, $500 or $600, because there are rental options as well. A lot of local fish stores have them on hand. So you might have to pay a little bit of a deposit because, people just ruin stuff, and that's just how we are, I guess. But yeah, go seek out that information. The more data you have, the better.
In my recent adventures here with this tank, like it's been a ride, right? Like, you think you're stable and you change one thing, and I'd imagine you guys at Reef Builders, right? You're making tweaks to the aquariums. You don't know what's going to happen if you mess some stability up. And I was mentioning, I tried, I got a Pax Bellum reactor on this. I was putting Chaetomorpha in there, and I keep killing it, and for whatever reason, it is just hammering the SPS. If a die off happens, I've gone through 3 batches now, and I think I figured out what I was doing wrong. And I wanted to ask you guys if you think I'm right, because I measured the flow through the reactor, right? I think it was like 150 gallons an hour or something. Seems reasonable, right? And then the on time. So I was messing with the on time for the light, right? At first, I had it like pretty like 8 hours, and then I had read like maybe I could do a really long because I wanted to knock my nitrite phosphate down, so I'm like 20 hours, and then it died. I'm like, was it the change in the spectrum or the amount of daytime reading?
Are
Do you
you
think
doing any
either of
traces at all? Any
trace
trace
elements?
elements? Yeah.
I am not currently, but this was really early on in the Chaeto. But I know it does what, iron and manganese. It starts
Yeah,
to.
iron's important, like iodine. It could be you pushed the photo period so high and you ran low on traces, so it burned out. So if you're pushing its metabolism by giving it all of that, it needs all of those things to have metabolism work. So you might be low on traces. You might send it an
So I
ICP.
did some Triton ICPs,
Hmm.
and some of those were low. But then I think it was like it was over the weekend. I was thinking about it, and I'm like, because I changed how I was cleaning the reactor, and I was like, I'm washing this thing with fresh water. I'm washing the Chaeto with fresh water. Maybe it's osmotic shock.
It could be. You can definitely do freshwater dips on Kato, but it's a, if you go from like out of the frying pan into the fire, you're in then a limited environment in terms of the traces it needs, and then you're also pushing it to its biological limits with having the reactor on so long. It could be
Yeah.
that perfect combination of everything. So maybe dial back the reactor to like 10 hours, get some clean Kato, and don't do the freshwater dip. Or if you do, have your traces in line. That's what I would say. It's probably the
Yeah.
combination of those three stressors.
Yeah. So I think we'll see. I'm gonna. I do I even need Cato? Like, is this?
I was gonna say, is Salem? Is this where he gets on his soapbox about
I,
macroalgae, or?
I might. Um, I think you maybe don't need Kato. I think maybe Kato is causing more harm than good, and there's other inorganic nutrient export strategies. I think that Kato and other macroalgae contribute to your organic nutrients by producing hydrophilic compounds that are not removed through a skimmer or carbon, and that can contribute to a poor microbiome, more pathogenic microbiome, copiotrophic environment. So you remove your inorganic nutrients, but you're adding to your organic nutrients. So you're making your
mhm.
tank dirtier in one way. So I
Yeah.
think that I think water changes are great. But water changes take time. Auto water
Well,
changes don't though, and you might know the people to make that happen. So
so okay. I like this. You know what's interesting? You know, it's one thing to hear and listen to people on the internet talk about, you should do this or that. But I listen to the people that have been successful keeping reefs over a decade. If you've kept a reef tank alive for over 10 years, I'm going to listen to what you have to say because you've got something right. And whatever you're doing, it's right over a long period of time. Being right over a short period of time, yeah, sure. But to do it like Jason Fox is an example. You know what his primary source of maintenance is all around the water change, right? Because as long as you got good salt, you build up organic nutrients, something's wrong with the tank, you're constantly diluting that problem, over and over again. He does his kind of like weekly, but it's 10% water change a week, and it just doesn't miss a beat. And his tanks are just thriving.
Yep.
his stuff looks great. Yeah, no, his
Yep.
his stuff's solid for sure.
Yeah, and I think we overcomplicate. I mean, that's like the key to this whole thing, right? Is the average hobbyist overcomplicates when it's just not necessary. A lot of the companies have done the research for the most part, and all you really need to do is just maintain it with the water changes and scraping glass and detritus every once in a while. Those kinds of things, like the regular maintenance stuff. It's the problems always occur when you let your tank go for 2, 3, 4 months, 5 months. You're kind of like, everything looks okay, and then boom, now we're on a downward trend because we weren't keeping up with maintenance. So I think the water change is tried and true, and I know that Isan over at Triton is like yelling at me right now, but but there are people that haven't done water changes in a long time, and again, you go back to the other anecdote of do what works for you. So if you've been successful for years and years not doing water changes and supplementing the water with whatever,
Then
then
get ready for the ticking time bomb of dissolved organic carbon to hit you like a truck. Put in the 5%.
What if they have a
You
sponge?
don't know what's going to happen, right? Like,
You don't know.
and that's the thing. You can't test for everything. Like if
Yeah.
it's just risky. It's more risky to just keep the same water column and then something builds up that you don't know about and that ICP doesn't test for.
No one's doing GCMS or UHPLC, man. Those are real expensive machines. No one's doing organic chemistry. It's a complete unknown. We're blind. Water change is all you can do. Run some carbon, I suppose. Have a skimmer. About it.
Yep.
Scary.
Yeah.
Maybe Ecotech should make an automated mini GCMS for our systems. Figure out how to engineer that. Yeah.
There you go.
What does it cost? What does a typical machine cost?
Like $250 for a cheap one. Okay.
Okay, I was like, $10? No.
No,
That's nothing. That's nothing. We need.
What can you do with UV Vis?
You can do a lot with UV Vis. Oh, well,
that's a little bit more approachable in terms of price point.
Yeah, you could do a lot with UV vis, but if you start you're gonna have to have reagents for a lot of the stuff. So then it would be a similar thing to the Trident, probably. So then
For
it's the reagent game and shelf life and stability, and there's a lot to work around there. But you could do some organic stuff with UV vis, like select like aromatic compounds and stuff. I don't know about the applicability for the average hobbyist there. They're
Yeah.
very specific questions typically. So
Well, and if just changing your salt water solves 90% of those problems, like
yeah, you don't need a UV vis to test for it. No.
but maybe you want one. I don't know.
Yeah.
those
True.
that don't know, what is UV vis?
UV vis, that's like a spectrophotometer. So you take a beam of UV light, which you can adjust, you put it through a sample, and then different organic compounds or different proteins can basically refract that UV light to that beam of light, that specific one, like 254 nanometers or something like that. And then there's a sensor that'll measure the difference in absorbance. You'll have like a blank, you'll have like a clear and water sample or something, or like let's say you put reagent in for some stuff, then you'll put this in and it measures the difference between those two, which then you can use to calculate the concentration of whatever that is in the sample.
Gotcha.
And you can get really fancy with the spectrums, and different little changes mean different things potentially. And it's an analytical technique that the sciencey types like to use sometimes.
Those types, those guys,
types, yeah,
it's so annoying. Those people. I can already see a part 2 coming for this podcast, so I would love to catch up again at some point. I do want to ask one more question before we get out of here, and I want to ask, how do you see the hobby evolving from your perspective in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, that's good. I think people getting into more sustainable coral and really leaning into aquaculture coral and aquacultured fish, we have to go in that direction if we're going to maintain the hobby. And using technology to get us there is important, but ultimately, I think as an industry, we just need to come to terms with how we're impacting nature and how we're impacting and creating sustainability for the new people coming in, and for those of us that have been in this for a while. And yeah, technology is great. The newest gadgets are nice, but I think focusing and trying to participate on that level is where the game should go. And I hope people take it that way.
Very good. I think we might be on that path.
I hope we're on that path.
Yeah, I think it gets a little bit more intense, and as we see maybe export bans happening and things like that. Like you said, in those times, then we try to figure out, like, okay, well, how can we sustainably do this? How can we grow our own? How can we breed our own? Things like that, spawn corals, all of that, so that we don't have to rely on.
Well, my hope is that we're not doing it just when the industry is on the knocks, just when there's a new piece of legislation coming out. I mean, the sad reality is that we could get swept up in some piece of legislation that passes Congress that has some, gotcha in there, that all of a sudden you can't ship coral in between states. Like, it was just this random, act of, we're trying to do good, and then we just totally turned something that was a positive influence on its head. I think in order to not be a footnote, we should, as hobbyists, kind of recognize this and do what we can, right? The companies have their responsibility, right? Companies need to be responsible for doing their part. But I think if you're really into the hobby, teaching people and helping to spread the ideas and understanding of what the stuff is like, that's what we should be doing.
For sure. That's what we're trying. We're trying to, at least on the Reef Builder side of things, trying to change a bunch of that perspective and shift it. So
Trying to build the reefs.
Trying to build the reefs, that whole name.
There you go.
Salem, do you have any other questions before we part ways?
No, I'm happy, man. I might be getting a custom Radion. I'm pretty that's satisfying.
That's what he's been thinking about this whole entire time.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for joining us on this episode of Reef Therapy. Again, if you want to hang with us at Reef Stock Chattanooga, that's coming up this weekend, 24, 25 at the convention center in Chattanooga. And it's a beautiful area. Salem and I went out there. We toured the whole place, supported a cult while we were there. So
Yeah.
Ask us in Chattanooga. We'll tell you all about it.
That happened.
Tickets and more at reefstock.show/Chattanooga. Thanks, guys. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Thanks.